Okay, continuing on. How many tens are in 180? What basic facts has 18 as a product? So tens that are in 180, we've gone over this in the previous lesson, that when you have something that ends in zero, right? And you can say when you're doing like these sticks, you can say instead of 180, you can say that those are 18 tens. So how many tens are in 180? That would be 18. What basic facts have 18 as a product? They're all right here. So we have 1 times 18 equals 18. To make it to 180, you could put the 0 either behind the 18 or you could put it behind the 10. So 1 times 180 equals 180. 10 times 18 equals 180. 2 times 9 equals 18. So that means 2 times 90 equals 180. Or 20 times 9 equals 180. 3 times 6 equals 18. So 3 times 60 equals 180. 30 times 6 equals 180 as well. So how many tens are in 90? That would be 9. There are 9 tens in 90. What basic facts have 9 as a product? Well, I could do 9 times 1. That's always going to be true. I could do 3 times 3. And I'm pretty sure that that's it. 9 times 1 and 3 times 3 are the only ones I could think of. So those are my basic facts. And so now it's your turn. How many tens are in 240? Go ahead and put your answer here. What basic facts has 24 as a product? So you could always go back to your multiplication chart in order to figure that out. Or if you have some of them memorized, you could list them here. There are a lot. How many tens are in 400? What basic facts has 40 as a product? And list them here. So for the next few problems, I want you can use fact families, you could use equal grouping, or you can use patterns to help you find factor pairs. So for each problem, fill in the blanks with different factor pairs that make the number sentences true. So for instance, you have A equals blank times blank. Let's say you're using 8 times 1, okay? So let's say you're using 8 times 1 for this one. You cannot switch it and go 1 times 8 because that's the same. We want different factor pairs. And all of these are going to have different ones, okay? So try not to do the turnaround rule when creating these, okay? If you do, then I will comment and tell you to rewatch this video. Here's another problem for you. The Kim family is serving dinner for 24 people. Mrs. Kim could have 1 table with 24 people or 2 tables with 12 people each. What are some other ways Mrs. Kim could set 24 people in equal groups at different numbers of tables? Think of factor pairs for 24. Use pictures, words, or numbers to show your table arrangement. So you can use the shapes tool at the top, or you can just write factor pairs. That will work. But tell me how you thought of it. So here, this is a little bit harder, okay? Because now you're telling me what are these factor pairs for extended facts. So the best thing that you could do if this is confusing and stressful for you, ignore the zeros. Just ignore the zeros and do it exactly like you would for the previous slides. And then put a 0 into those different numbers, okay? Okay, so now we're moving on to English language arts. I will be able to compare a realistic fiction text to other stories I have read. So, the very first thing that you're going to do is you're going to read paragraphs 17 through 32. And I want you to answer or look for key events that answer this question. How do these paragraphs describe the weather of Barrow, Alaska? Okay, because we're all talking about weather and making predictions. So tell me a little bit about the weather, or look for that as you're reading. And then annotate by underlining the key events. Remember that the key events are events that are happening to the character when they meet somebody new, when they go a different place, or other things that are triggering maybe an emotional reaction. Those are all key events. And here's your key events chart. I do want a summary of this part of the text. Now, once you are done with that, then you're going to move on to this. You can't do this before you do that, just because you will want more information about what happens in Water Sky before you move on. So go ahead and pause and do the key events and summary for that last part of Water Sky. Come back in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so you learned about fiction earlier in the year. While all fiction texts share some features, certain kinds of fiction can have different features. How is Water Sky different from other fictional stories you've read, and how is it similar? So I want you to put your ideas right here. And so some other fictional stories that you've read have been Cinderella's Really Bad Day, the King Midas, Snow White, a Russian folktale. I'm trying to think of more. I'm sure that you could think of more. But we've read a lot of fictional stories. So what is different about those and what's similar about those? So this is all features of realistic fiction. So I'm going to tell you what they are one at a time. So this is, and what Water Sky is, it's called a realistic fiction. And I'll explain more about why it's a little bit different from the other fictional stories that we read. So for instance, characters are imagined but act like real people or animals. So we've read some folk tales where we have animals that could talk, right? And so when we have characters that are animals that could talk, that's not real. And that doesn't happen in real life. So even though these characters are imagined, they still act like real people. Animals still don't talk, okay? And characters don't fly or have magical powers and things like that, because in reality, those things aren't real. Events are imagined, but could happen in real life. So, for instance, in King Midas, having the god come and talk to King Midas and things like that, those are huge events for King Midas, but they're made up and they can't actually happen in real life. What's different about Water Sky is that all of these things are imaginary, but they could happen, okay? So characters must solve a problem that could happen in real life. So, and that's another thing, right? For instance, I'm going to talk a lot about King Midas. King Midas, his problem was that he was unhappy that everything he touched turned to gold, right? Is that a problem that could happen in real life? No. So what's different in Water Sky is that the problems that our character faces in this story has problems that could actually happen to a normal person. Our next one right here. Settings may include imagined, but could exist in real life. Okay, so Barrow, Alaska might not be real, but it sounds real and it could be real, that would be something that we would need to look up. But the kingdom that King Midas lives in is not real, and it couldn't exist in real life. There's no way to, there's no place in the universe where a king could have that castle and live his life. That would be actually in real life. Settings may be real places and times. So let's say I'm writing a story about a girl in 1776, and she's talking about the revolution and things like that. That's a real setting, like New York, and it did exist in 1776, so that's a real time. This story about Barrow, Alaska is a real place in a real time as well. And some of those other, like Snow White, a Russian folktale, we don't really know what time period that is, and we don't know where exactly that is. And it's not really based on a real place or a real time period. So what you're going to do is you're going to skim and scan Water Sky now that you've read the entire thing to find examples of each of those genre features. So in this chart, we have genre features. Characters are imagined but act like real people or animals. Then you need to go back through the text after you're done, after you skim and scan, and find an example where people or animals are acting real, not imagined, not not talking, not doing something that is something realistic. Okay. Settings may be real places and times. Find an example in the text that tells us maybe the time and place that this story is taking place in. And then you're going to go through and continue on and finish up this this chart. Now, after you've looked at everything and found all of those different examples as to why Water Sky is a realistic fiction, you're going to write 1 or 2 short paragraphs in which you compare and contrast realistic fiction, like Water Sky, to other types of fiction. Now, this could be stories that you've read at home, stories that we've read together in class, like King Midas and Snow White, a Russian Folktale, or Cinderella. Or it could be things that you're reading at home, like Charlotte's Web or Matilda. Well, Matilda's not a realistic fiction. But so you can take Water Sky and compare it to other fictional stories that you know. Please go check out Miss Eigel's Google Classroom for any directions. But as part of us checking in with the plant to see how this is going and see where the roots are growing, I believe we had 4 roots last time. Let's take a look and see what we have now. We still have 4 fairly long roots around. And now we have a new one starting right here. See, sorry, some of the roots are getting in the way. Right here is a new one. Okay. And then up at the top of some of the bigger roots, put this one away. Up at the top of this root, you have more roots coming out of it. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 more roots coming out of just the top of this one. I don't know how well you can see it. It seems like this one is producing a little bit more roots than the other one. But it's making good progress. Is still not ready to be planted in a pot. And I am about to run out of time. So I will talk to you guys later.